Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, and on the other end, Pascal Floor. I was going to say something along the lines of Monster Floor. I don't know, because you just cracked open your Monster, which is just completely classic. Dude, I really fancy a Monster now.
Yeah, it's good. I don't know why, but for the time being, I actually switched over to the green ones. I don't know why. I can't really explain the sentiment behind it. You
have a huge,
store I do.
Of them now, right?
I do. And they have... The problematic thing about it is when you have that amount of Monster lying at home, you think you could easily spread it out over months, right? But at the same time, you think, no, I have to actually then empty them at some point. So let's do it now rather than later.
You haven't cracked open 2 in one day, have you?
Mm-mm.
No.
Not at home.
My rule. Not having 2.
I have done it already, of course, when I'm traveling and I don't have access to something like, I don't know, coffee or espresso. So then I can easily see myself having 2. But what I've noticed is 3 is a little bit too much.
Whoa, I've never done 3 in a day.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I just realized it after doing a little bit the calculations in my head of how much caffeine you're ingesting with just one can. And that it's way more than I'm usually ingesting when I have 3 espressi or so.
Yeah, what's in a can? 120 milligrams? Something like that?
I think it's a little bit more, isn't it?
Is it 35 milligrams per 100 milliliters?
32, I think it is. Yeah, 32. Yeah, something like this.
Yeah, it's not crazy.
Right away.
I think people think it's way more than it is. If you get a venti black coffee from Starbucks. Right.
So 30 milligrams per 100 milliliter. But if you really then sum it up, right, I mean, it's still much, much more than 1 espresso most of the time.
But yeah, a venti, people will get a venti Starbucks, which is 600 mils. And I'm just like, what? I can remember getting a black coffee one time and I hadn't been drinking it very long. And I got the biggest from Costa, sorry. I literally felt like I was on drugs. I was like, this is a wild, I've not had this amount of caffeine. This feels insane.
It is. But that's what I'm doing right now. I also feel a little bit tired just due to all of the events of the previous couple of weeks now. It really kind of catches up. And over the past couple of days, I was always, throughout the day, a little bit of mental fog. And also by the end of the day, I was just tired. I was just lying on the couch. I couldn't do many things. And because right now I don't even know what to watch in terms of anime. So what it is that I did was to revert back to reading some mangas, and I was reading them then on the phone, and I was actually my eyes were kind of closing at times because I was just so tired.
How is it reading on the phone?
It's good.
Is it not? Just something about having the paper. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Of course, that's greater, I think, especially kind of reading books. I prefer having it in your hands instead of in a digital version. I don't know what it is, but in a digital kind of ebook or e-reader sense, whenever I tried to read ebooks in the past, I always fell asleep. I can't stay focused and concentrated with a device like this in front of me, but when I have a book in my hands, it's much, much easier for me. I can't explain why, but it's just a matter of fact. And funny enough, with the mangas, it's a little bit of a different thing because probably there's just too much going on in a short period of time that's then still keeps my attention span in check.
Pictures.
Yeah, probably. Right? And it's also just very fast paced most of the time.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, yeah. Steve, have you noticed my shirt, actually?
I was going to say, you've got the old school
the very
logo.
Old school, yeah. It's from 2017, man. When I got it, I think that you've created those in 2016 or so. Still have those.
I think I still have a bunch of white t-shirts with the old Revive logo on it. And I'm just like, what do I do with these? I give them to charity. It'd be weird people walking around with that Revive
But these are
logo.
Great because it's kind of that, what is it, X Armor? I don't even know that brand.
Under Armour, yeah.
Under Armour, exactly. And these are great.
Yeah, I don't know if I have got rid of those myself or not. I don't know if they fit anymore for me because is that a large you've got on?
I can't really. No, it's a medium. Sorry. Oh, sorry for that.
I
would have loved to say that, like, yes, it's a large one. The medium doesn't fit me anymore. But I'm just wearing this one simply because my back is now finished with the tattoo. And due to the fabric, it's a little bit easier on my skin. It doesn't really kind of start or cause my back to itch too much, especially overnight. This is way more, I don't know, it just is a little bit softer overall. And it's also, like you said, it's a little bit more breathable. And that's why I actually reverted back to this shirt now. And I haven't worn this in, I think, 3 years as well.
I don't know what it is about the material of those. For me, at least, they end up stinking under the armpits very quickly. And I'm just like, for God's sake, this is meant to be good material for sweat. It's
often just happening when they are fitting too tight, what I've noticed.
That I so rarely wear tops that fit me tightly around the arms anymore, because it just ends up digging under my armpits. It's super uncomfortable. So I'm like oversized everything.
Do you still remember the time when we actually received a package from Lead?
Yes. The t-shirt never fit me.
That's the thing. I still have like, I think 8 t-shirts at home, all of them medium sized, and they are too snug. I don't feel comfortable wearing them. And funny enough, there's even one shirt that is completely new that I've never used, never wore. And I'm always thinking like, I would probably be able to fit into them at some point in the future.
Hugo, he's got them next.
Yeah, exactly. Because they are way too snug. And I don't feel comfortable with that anymore. Even pants at times where it's like, oh, this is... I was skinny jeans for life, but I've even there reverted a little bit, or turned my back to it, simply because I don't really like that feeling on my skin that much anymore. It doesn't really, I don't know. Does that make sense? Can you relate to that, Steve?
Yeah, I always felt that with the skinny jeans, or like even, skinny jeans where they're like skin tight almost. They just make me hot and uncomfortable, whereas slightly looser fitting is just so much more comfortable. Just a little bit more like give in the jeans, and it's like, now my legs can breathe.
I still have one pair of Legend Londons, which are kind of skin tight, and it's so uncomfortable. I've never wore those jeans simply because it was a replacement. Because I think in one order that I've made like ages ago, there was one that was the wrong, I think it was the wrong jean, and they gave me a voucher then for a new jeans, and I thought like, let's get the skin tight or the skin fit jeans, and I've never worn those because it really looks, and I'm sorry to say this, but it really looks like as if I'm a woman then. Bottom half.
Too tight.
Yeah, way too tight.
I think I don't keep up on fashion trends very well, but from what I've gathered, the skinny jean fit for females isn't even like an in look anymore. It's like they're much more going, even flares or baggier jeans. And
you're right. There was not that long ago, like 4 years, 5 years, especially in the fitness industry. I think that Thomas More even talked about it at some point. Getting kind of women's
he was buying women's jeans
and stuff like this, right? I did it when I was very, very skinny and I still played in a band, but that is already kind of 2005, 2006 when I was very skinny, and you just aim for that ultra skinny look. And during that time, you couldn't find stretched jeans. The only brand that they had back then was something with monkey. What was it again? Cheap Monday? Cheap Monday. Exactly that. I think Swedish brand was the only jeans manufacturer who did that. Everything else you couldn't really find something with stretched cotton or something like this. Elastan, I think it's called. And at some point, you then had to revert back to female jeans because there was nothing fitting for males.
I think I just didn't really wear jeans for a long time. The stretch fabric was a game changer though. It was so needed. How did we end up talking about fashion? I have no idea, but it happened
because we are the fashion gods.
Fashionistas. Your August, I was joking to you that your August was basically as busy as like any 1 year would have been for me. You basically did in August what I would do in a year, or even probably what you'd normally do in a year as well, potentially. And obviously, I think really, do you just have now with the seminar in a couple of weeks now? Is that the last main big event for you of this year?
It is, and I'm so grateful for that, to be honest. I think that normally you get used to it, to always constantly be on the road and be busy. During that time, you may not even notice how tired you are. And I had it back then when I was working as a tour manager, and I was on the road with a couple of bands for like 2 weeks straight before you then went back home, for example. That during that time frame, you didn't even notice that you were sleep deprived, you were just tired from constantly drinking alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And once you arrived back home, it was kind of a weird sensation because you were massively tired. You were hit by a hammer. At the same time, you have gotten so used to always be on the road and constantly going that you still wanted to go out, even though that you've been massively exhausted. And it was kind of the same, maybe because I'm now older and I just like my routine, that I'm now at a point where I'm just like, I'm tired. I just want to relax. But at the same time, I've gotten used to keep on going, that at some point, to some extent, I miss not going out and doing another thing or exploring something else.
Yeah.
And experiencing something else. Because these were all lovely events and lovely experiences that probably stay with me for the rest of my life. Wedding, Hugo is now going to school, for example, Mallorca, so the honeymoon, right? All these kind of things, they will stay with me, but of course it's exhausting. And I'm so happy to be in my typical kind of routine and back to my typical environment now.
Yeah, I think that's where you need a bit of both. Because I think when you just are in your usual routine, usual environment, it's super productive for growth, for whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it's business, like relationships, in the gym, of course, really, really helps. But every now and then you need a disruption of some sort to just like almost regroove you in some ways and to make you appreciate again going into that phase. Like if you're just constantly going down the same path, it just becomes a little bit too monotonous almost. And so, yeah, I definitely appreciate these things that just kind of keep life a little bit exciting and they keep you on your toes. But it takes I often find at least, it takes quite a bit of planning ahead of time to make sure you have something where I'm like, it's the weekend, I can do something. I'm like, what am I going to do? I should have planned this ahead of time.
That's true. And sometimes I even find myself not knowing what to do on the weekends, if or when I have the time. But I also then don't take the time to relax, which is a fucked up thing as well at the same time, because these are the perfect moments and opportunities for you to refuel and to be re-energized, then moving into the next week. And instead of just calming down, relaxing, no, you have the feeling that you're missing out on something and that you are unproductive and that it's a waste of time. And this, of course, is a vicious cycle to some extent, because you're digging without actually being productive or achieving anything. And I also felt that over the past couple of days now, very unproductive. I was sitting, of course, and doing all of the things that I needed to do, but I felt like I didn't really work productively. And by that, pissing away hours on a daily basis, which then in return frustrated me. And then you try to sit in front of the computer for longer hours to make up the work, which then, of course, in return causes you to feel even more tired. And yeah, I know that you can relate to that. Yeah. It's kind of junk volume, kind of.
Yeah. No, I totally relate to that. I have done it so many times where I'm just like, hey, I have time to do work. Let's sit in and do it. And then I'm like, I'm just not in a productive state to be able to do it. You're better off going for a walk or taking that opportunity just to chill and then recharge and go forward at another time. It's so frustrating when you're just sat there and 2 hours have passed. You're like, what have I done in these 2 hours? I feel like I've stressed about trying to do something and I haven't actually done anything productive.
Exactly. And sometimes I even think right now, at least, instead of constantly going and instead of constantly distracting yourself with what you deem productive work, for example, you never really take the time to sit down and think and come up with ideas maybe, because you never take that moment of just like sitting there with your own thoughts. And often what I found is when I'm not as stressed, and I'm not saying that I was massively stressed, but when I'm not super stressed or super busy with work, and finally have time to just like have some thoughts, because often when you're super stressed and tired and busy, and I try to collect my thoughts, there's nothing there. Does that make sense? It's kind of emptiness, because I was so fixated on the task at hand that there's no space left for then thinking about innovative ideas or kind of, I don't know, creative things. But when you then finally have the time, then maybe you start to become more productive again, because you have some new thoughts, new ideas that you want to work on. And I think that's why it's sometimes super important to not just always keep on going, but it's also at the same time super hard to take that time.
Yeah, it's a balance, because you have to do the work to progress and to keep moving forward. But it's similar to training. It's like more is not better type of thing. And I've definitely been there where I just think more and more, harder and harder. But sometimes it's worth pulling back. It's actually similar to the podcast that came out of Mike just recently, where he had that sort of like in his prep, he was like, no one's going to outwork me. I'm going to like push myself into the ground. I'm going to be the leanest on stage. And he just had all this fatigue that was masking any sort of good look that he could achieve. And he couldn't rid that. So he just can't perform well. Or like I always think about powerlifters, like they have to go through a taper and a peak. Otherwise, like they're going to just have all this fatigue that they've accumulated through the hard training, which is building the strength, but they can't show it. And like you have to have that careful balance to be able to perform well at various times and tasks. Even with like, I don't know, client roster, like I can't have 100+ clients, because I won't be able to give them my best. And I'd prefer to have half that and actually be able to perform with them and then get better results and that sort of thing. There's got to be that careful balance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on top of it all, I haven't taken a proper deload in like 8 weeks now. So
yes,
that's of course playing into the everything that we've talked about as well. I'm taking a look at my schedule, and it was kind of, and I think I touched on it last week already, that there has always been kind of 3 days of rest here, 4 days of rest here, 3 days of rest here. But the training days, because it's always kind of scattered around, and also the rest days, they are always kind of back to back. It's never spread across the entire microcycle. The times in between were always kind of gaps of like 10 days of training. And I didn't really take any kind of rest days then most of the time, unless I really needed to. And it was always kind of mimicking what a normal, typical last week of a mesocycle looks like for me, where I always try to really push to the limits. So that those 3 to 4 to 5 days, was there 5 days? No, those 3 to 4 days, I could take without any kind of, I don't think that guilt is the right word here, because I don't feel guilty. It's not that I beat myself up about it, and I don't want to cause or give a false impression on people who feel that way, because I know that there are people feeling guilty for not moving, not being active. But it's more like I want to know that I deserve those 3 to 4 days of rest, that I know that I had, or that I made sure that this is kind of well earned, well deserved. And that I know that the body
of the time.
Exactly needs those 3 to 4 days so that I can repeat the same cycle again. And this was all, of course, stemming from all the social events and the things that went on here over the past couple of weeks. But I'm slowly getting to the point where I can feel like I'm not really productive in the gym as well anymore. The focus dwindles. I don't really feel as much of a pump anymore. If I want to go hard, I don't really have the gas anymore. The oomph, right?
Yeah.
The willpower, maybe. It's kind of a combination of all of those things. Willpower, the physiological requirements for it to really push, because fatigue is more and more creeping up. And I know that this is something that you've went through to some extent when you try to extend that mesocycle, and you came to the point where things simply didn't really work that much or that well anymore.
Yeah, is what it's reminded me of, like how, a few light days or days off can buy you maybe a bit of productive training time, but you need a whole like 5-7 day deload to be able to buy you weeks upon weeks of productive training. And that kind of permanent, like, you've just got this shadow or cloud of fatigue hovering over you the entire time. So you're going to the gym, you can't really switch on for sets. And so you're just kind of going in there and you can kind of perform, but it doesn't feel great. You're like, you know, you've got another gear, but you can't get into it because the body's fatigued. And so you have got that accumulative fatigue that's just, added up over time. And so nothing kind of feels great, but like training performance doesn't look terrible, but you can feel in yourself that you're not where you should be.
That's a great explanation and example. It doesn't feel bad, but it also doesn't feel great. You know that you're not performing to the very best of your abilities and capabilities. And you just know that taking a deload, like a proper deload, is the right way now in order to get rid of that fatigue that holds you back right now. It's kind of like a hydraulic chamber or so, right? Where then the air pressure always keeps you from touching metal on metal, for example, because it's compressed. And the harder you compress it, the less likely it is that you are actually then touching the both ends of the spectrum. All right? So you will never really, because the more air is compressed on a tighter space, the more it slows down. It kind of feels that same way as well. You will never really reach your full capacity.
Have you got an idea of when you're going to deload then?
Yeah, the thing is, so at the beginning of September, so you know it, Steve, on the 8th of September, I'm getting then the final session for my tattoo, or the tattoo project on my back. And that is then where I'm getting my head shaved and then the backside of my head, right? This will then be one day. Based on the last time that I had my head tattooed, where I have already kind of the outlines, that recovered super fast. And also the head isn't really involved in too many things when it comes to training. The only thing that you need to be careful with is then sweat, of course, right? To keep it clean. But the good thing is, it's not like, for example, right now, today I needed to modify my chest day because I can't lie on my back and put some pressure on my back right now. So I had to do kind of cable presses, standing, single arm, and a lot of cable flies, for example, so that I don't really put too much pressure on my back. And with the backside of your head, you don't really have that restriction most of the time, right? Because it's probably not involved that much. But at the same time, I still want to then have a couple of rest days afterwards, especially also because London is taking place. So right now, I'm planning and start to take the deload from the 8th onwards or the 7th onwards. So 7th, probably the last training session, and then take a proper deload for then the time of the tattoo session, London seminar, and then coming back again.
So you're getting the tattoo the day before coming into London? Holy shit. That's unfortunate timing.
I don't think that's going to be a big deal, though.
Okay.
Especially with just the backside of my head. It's not wrapped in foil anymore. So I just need to be careful with sweating. That's all. And then keeping it a little bit moist. That's an easy task, especially because it's on the backside of the head. It's not rubbing against kind of fabrics and all that kind of jazz. So that's why.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say more reason for people to come to the London seminar.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
to see this piece of art.
Yeah. And also see what I look like bald.
Yes, true. Oh, wait, just the back of the head though, right?
No.
You're not getting rid of it. The whole head's gone.
Yeah. I need to.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I need to because he needs to have some space. And if he's then tattooing more than just the outlines, he doesn't really want that the head or the hair is at some point maybe falling backwards and all that kind of stuff. That's why.
Oh my God, you're going to be looking bald for the seminar. Yeah. Not looking, you are. That's going to be a look.
Is, I'm getting my head kind of shaved on the 7th. So the day before the tattoo. So I'm going to the barber because it needs to be well done or well made without any kind of, I don't know, without any kind of cuts and all that kind of stuff, because that needs to be avoided. because if there are some kind of deep cuts there, that wouldn't be the greatest either. And also the skin has to be all right, soft and not agitated and irritated by then me kind of shaving off my head. Yeah. That's why I'm going to the barber on the 7th, then the 8th is the tattoo appointment, and the 9th we are going to see each other kind of very, very, very freshly shaved.
Oh, man. Okay, we're going to have some amazing pictures, I know that much. Even more reasons for people to make it there to see this spectacle, because that's going to be something else. That's exciting. That makes sense that you're going to deload, because, and it's actually so funny, we've mentioned our cycles are aligned by accident somehow. As in, next week is my 5th week of training. I'm typically a 5-to-1 accumulation to deload type of guy. And so I would have a session on the Saturday. Of course, I don't think that's going to be possible because we're pretty much 9 to the whole day and then the evening. So I might be able to get it in on the Sunday maybe, or maybe I'll just skip that day and just go into the deload. I'll just have to see if there's like a week 6, but I know I won't be able to train Saturday and Sunday basically. So that's one day skipped. But I'm probably going to be similar to you and just end up deloading.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I know, even though that we've discussed things prior to this podcast recording, that this year is going to way more relaxing than the previous years because we're not presenting. It's just meeting up with a small group of people and taking them through kind of a training session. It's going to be way more relaxing. Still, those interactions can be quite stressful, especially then with traveling, commuting for you and all that kind of stuff. It still takes a toll on especially also you. I know this, Steve.
I always underestimate how much these things impact me because every time I go through them and I look back at like times at which I felt trashed, I'm like, oh, that was associated with, I don't know, I was at this like conference, I was at this show, I was judging at the WNBF. I'm like, yeah, it's whenever I go out of like have to travel and interact with people, it just fatigues the crap out of me and it's a big stress, which is a shame, but at the same time, it's good to know it about yourself.
Speaking of which, we're going to take a short break and then we will be back with a little bit more about this.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
So I also know, Steve, that Mike Challis, so our physio and also coach at Revive Stronger, he's not going to come to the London training camp. He is going to have his first show there. So it's going to be an even more eventful week for you, or weekend rather, for you as well. And also, you've been traveling like last weekend due to the bank holiday in the UK. So talk a little bit more about it. What has been going on? Has this impacted your fatigue as well?
Maybe a little bit on the weekend. It shouldn't be too bad. Like going home to my parents, it's only like an hour and a half, like door to door, maybe a little bit over an hour and a half. So it's not terrible. But of course, it's interacting with like family basically the entire day. Nutrition's a little bit off. It's actually a great timing talking about last week, because my nutritional approach there was like, hey, I couldn't weigh things out. It was kind of similar to the wedding, but I did still backlog and backtrack it somewhat. So I have some awareness of it because I had the ability to do that. But yeah, again, it was like just making mindful choices, filling my plate with appropriate choices given my goals and everything. So that was fine. It was a bit of a later night, but nothing too terrible. And then what was the other thing you mentioned? The show.
The show, yeah. Because it perfectly aligns with them with the beginning of the deload. You being busy, needing to take care of a lot of things, and then it makes even more sense to plan in a deload like this.
Yeah. So yeah, Mike's competing at the MPA. I think it's like a novice. It's kind of like the first timers of the UK FBA. They've just got like a novice show. And so, yeah, he's a novice because he hasn't. I think you have to place in like a top 3 within a UK federation or something, and he's never placed in a top 3. This is essentially, it's not his first time competing because he competed back in 2014, the same year as me. But it's been a freaking long time since he's competed. So yeah, we'll be kind of moving into that. And man, talking about like weekends and stress, he quite literally has a show like every weekend for like the next 4 or 5 weekends after that. Like it's just literally like we're digging, pulling back, digging, pulling back, digging, pulling back. But yeah, it's going to be an exciting time for him, and I'm definitely going to try and be at a number of the shows too. It's unfortunate, man, shows just sell out quickly. I was going to try and be at the UK FBA this weekend because it's in Camberley. Camberley it's fairly close. Via car, it's an hour. But when you try and commute via train and everything, it ends up being over 2.5 hours, like from my house, which is ridiculous. But they've also sold out of tickets. So it's unfortunate I won't be able to be there because I have a client, Rob, competing, who I say to him, you have a qualifiable physique. You probably know what I mean by that. Like, I don't know how he's going to place. I think I'd be super surprised if he's not in full first call outs, and I'll be surprised also if he doesn't qualify. But yeah, so I would like to think that him and Mike will both be at the UK FBA finals, so I'll definitely be at the UK FBA finals to be there for those guys. And then obviously like the WNBF, I'll be there anyway. But so it's going to be, thinking about it, actually talking about like weekends away and all of that, I know it's like spoken about where people who are like contest prep coaches and how they're like, hey, you can't be concurrently the best athlete you can be, the best competitor you can be, and also the best coach you can be. Like, it's a hard combination. I could see that if they're traveling to every show for every client every weekend and they have a lot of competitors. And I just personally, my own selfish ambitions as a competitor would never want to get to that point where I know I'm detracting from my competitive ambitions by kind of pushing too much on trying to take as many competitors to stage as possible, because that's a lot, especially if you're traveling abroad.
That's true. No, absolutely.
But yeah, so it's going to be, it's getting to like the pointy end of everyone's preps now. I have a number of people who are coming in who are weeks out from shows, people across Europe and things. And it's super exciting because I think I probably have my most competitive roster yet this season. And so I think and we've already had Jake, who a couple of weekends ago, did his first show, won his class, won the overall. It was like the MPC Midwest Naturals. So that's pretty exciting. So we're just, and I mean, imagine that. I don't even know how I would respond competing for the first time, winning my class, winning the overall. I'd be like, holy shit, this is a bit much. Like, and I'm just trying to keep him grounded because I think that it's easy to get like big headed off being like, hey, I did this for the first time. And
or expect that you now always have to play super, super well in the top 3 at every show, for example, because everything else is non-acceptable anymore.
Yeah. And actually, I saw a BNBF qualifier. You may have seen it too. Jan went there with a few of his clients he's based in Vienna, right?
I think he is now.
Yeah, they're all Vienna based. But anyway, and that qualifier looked mad. Like it looked like a finals for some of them. And I was like, I think AJ Morris had the heavyweight winner and he looked like unreal. And I was just like, again, you see qualifiers like that, which are like basically finals caliber, and just the caliber of it's a mixed bag. Like some natural shows, there isn't that high quality, whereas at some it's unreal. And I think on average, the quality of competitor has just been increasing over time. The actual creme de la creme might not be getting better, but the average competitor in natural bodybuilding has certainly leveled up, which makes me kind of nervous because I have this expectation for myself to be qualifying for finals and everything. But I mean, if I go and step on stage with some of these beasts that are now there and it's like a finals, I mean, it's going to be challenging.
That's true. No, absolutely. And some shows, it's just ridiculous to see. But I think it's always important then, especially for first-time competitors, to then have a look at certain shows before you're competing for the first time, just to set your expectations straight, not just because your coach told you, because I have the feeling that when you are in the deep zone of the contest prep, right, and you have some certain expectations, words don't really reach you that much anymore. You have to see it with your own eyes in order to be grounded. That's why I think it's quite valuable to actually then participate or go to a very high level or high quality natural show. Or if you're an enhanced athlete, take a look at some of the more high quality shows around you, maybe that is enhanced as well, just to get a feel for what it actually looks like. Not just on social media, not just the 1, 2, 3 high level athletes, but the entire field. Because sometimes I think that people even there have a wrong expectations of what the worst competitor looks like and also the top competitors look like.
Yeah. It's really good to experience that and also just get an understanding of like how the judges like call you across and like hitting your and the thing that will probably be highlighted for most people going to their first show is seeing people who can pose, who can't and who can't, because man, it makes such a big difference if you can't show off your physique with good quality posing. And as a judge, you can see the people who can pose well and they automatically, they just take your eye, like just subconsciously you're like, hey, that guy can hit poses. He looks confident. He's showing off everything. And the people who can't show it off, you're like willing them to, especially if they've got lots of muscle mass, you're like willing them to open up or something. And they're doing a back double bicep. They're pinching their scapula. And you're like, come on.
This not only comes from someone who's a coach, but has been working as a judge as well. So right? If you're saying, okay, this catches the eyes of the judges, it's coming actually from a judge himself and a coach himself. So if there's anyone to listen to Steve right now.
I actually have some credibility here now. It's taken a while, but we have it, which is cool. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a busy end of the year, but also exciting. Like there's opportunities for people like Mike, for example. Not that it's not no expectation of either me or him, because we ultimately just don't know how the lay of the land is going to go. Like we said, there could be just they could be champions turning up to the finals this year because, I don't know, everyone's just decided to just get shredded. But there's opportunities to potentially go to WNBF Worlds for Mike, potentially, depending how things go, which is super exciting to like think that could be there for him. But I'm also aware, like we said, there's back-to-back shows weekend after weekend. It's going to be tough, and he needs to get better across those, and he has room to keep getting better as well.
Yeah. On another note then, have you recovered from your mini cut so far?
Yes. So appetite is still good though. And I was actually going to ask you this question. What if you know what your body weight is above your like low of the mini cut? Have you gained much since?
Yes, but I don't know how representative it is. That's the thing.
Because of all the inflammation from...
Yeah, because of all the traveling that happened over the past couple of weeks now, there hasn't been a quiet moment where I was in my usual environment, right? After Mallorca, of course, Mallorca was also a little bit different due to the food that has been served there. At that time, it was at around like 78 kilograms, so much higher than I anticipated and liked. And then shortly after, it was already kind of this week where I was then traveling to Vienna, got my entire back basically tattooed another time. Then I stepped on the scale and it was just out of curiosity, what it's like. At times, you just want to step on the scale to see how the body is responding to that. And same as the last time where I said that my back is even jiggling when I'm walking around. It was the same story here this time as well. Traveling, flights got delayed, full of inflammation on my back, stepped on the scale, 79 kilograms, which is something that I don't really like to see. But at the same time, it is what it is.
Bad data.
Yeah. And my lowest weigh-in on the minicut was 75.6. And as you may know, I've ended it at the beginning of August. Then all of those things happened. Traveled to Vienna twice, back and forth. Wedding, honeymoon, then the social gathering due to my son. So lots of things that then impacted that. So there wasn't a quiet moment for having any kind of representative scale weight readings, unfortunately. Yeah. So I would assume that it's probably somewhere around close to 78 kilograms, which is heavier than I would like to, but at the same time also not a big deal because I take a look at the physique, still all right. A little bit of definition, it has been faded away. Unfortunately, I can always see it on the separation of my abs because these are the ones where I can detect leanness the fastest, but it's also the first place where then leanness is fading away.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Yeah, it's kind of one of those situations. It's similar to like your wedding or whatever in terms of tracking nutrition. You just kind of have to trust yourself that you're doing a good job, because there's too much noise to be able to navigate that in any particular way. So you just have to see how you come out as a wash the other side, versus trying to manipulate stuff in the moment and be like, oh no, I'm in too big a surplus, whatever. So yeah, it makes sense that you need probably a couple of weeks after the UK, then you actually have like a good scale weight reading eventually, where you could be like, okay, this is where I'm at.
Exactly. And also on another note, because I think it may be valuable for some of the listeners who are traveling a couple of times, who are participating at lots of social events, especially over the Christmas period. We see it most of the time when people are traveling often. They are at social gatherings, obligations, and all that kind of stuff, where then the scale becomes less of a reliable tool. The only thing that you can do in those situations is try to be as mindful as possible when you're then traveling. We've talked about it in the last podcast episode that I still ticked off what I find all of the boxes. I didn't deviate too much. I ate mindfully. I still, of course, enjoyed myself, because just today in one of the check-ins, I even brought it up to one of my athletes that some people abuse, I think, the term enjoyment, what they deem as enjoyment. And enjoyment, in my opinion, shouldn't be abused in the sense of like, I don't track, I go YOLO mode, and this is though how many people approach enjoyment. When some athletes tell me, I just wanted to enjoy the moment, I know what this means. This means, Pascal, I didn't track anything, I didn't eat mindfully, I had 6-7 drinks, was actually a little bit tipsy, and then I ate like 2 to 3 plates alongside with a little bit of dessert. That's what it actually most of the time means, right? If someone tells me I wanted to enjoy my holiday, you can enjoy the holiday and still eat mindfully and still stay on track, because it's more of a short-term gratification, like a drug addict. You're just chasing the high that makes you feel amazing, but then you have to deal with the potential long-term consequences afterwards. And they are way more devastating most of the time. So a little bit of moderation goes a long way. If you then have a more mindful approach, right, then you don't have to suffer and deal with the potential long-term consequences afterwards. And often, I know this from personal experience with me, myself, and also clients, that this leads to a much happier and much more grateful and well-balanced approach over the long term.
Yeah. It reminds me of the kind of bros, if we can put it in those terms, like who follow a strict meal plan. These are all my foods. And then they have a cheat day or a cheat meal or a free meal. And it basically, they need that because of how restrictive their day-to-day eating is. So if someone feels like they need to switch off and overeat to enjoy, it's like, well, you're not enjoying your diet day-to-day. Maybe you're being a bit too restrictive in your day-to-day eating. Maybe there can be some more moderation within that. But I'm the same with you. I had a client being like, he's in his off season. He was like, he finds it stressful to have to track every single thing, every meal all the time. He was like, can I have 1 to 2 meals with my family that I just am mindful and don't track? And I was like, you can absolutely do that. The only issue with that is when people use that as an excuse to just go off the rails. And that, like you said, is quite often what I see, where it's like, tracking is so restrictive, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, I mean, it is in some senses, it has to keep you within bounds, but like going towards quote unquote intuitive eating or like just pure intuitive eating, quite often people use it as an excuse just to like, again, become gluttonous, which is not the way you want to go. And that's why mindful eating is what we talk about much more, because then it keeps you with some restriction or bounds in place where you aren't, again, abusing the short-term gratification for the long-term cost that that's going to bring.
That's exactly it. Absolutely. And that's what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks as well. I didn't really think about tracking things whenever we ate at a restaurant. Still, had a look at the menu, still made some mindful choices about, okay, what sounds the most reasonable in the sense of like something that I do enjoy, something that will taste great. At the same time, though, something that is in a reasonable range of probably calories. If I go with the lasagna, that can range from, 500 calories to all the way up to 2,000 calories, depending on how much fatty things they are throwing in there. Whereas I do enjoy something like a proper steak with some vegetables and potatoes or so. I love stuff like this. So if I have the menu in front of me, I'll make the mindful and conscious decision of going down a path where I have the enjoyment and also have more of a reasonable approach, instead of swinging from one end to the other and then have to deal with the potential consequences later down the line, because I know what or how it makes me feel. Right? I know how it makes people feel when they are stepping on the scale after maybe a holiday where they enjoyed too much, come back and weigh 2 kilograms heavier or more. I know never have I experienced anyone of my athletes in the past saying like, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to gain those 2 kilograms. That's why I did it. No, it always comes with a little bit of regret and distaste for what has happened. And it doesn't have to be like this. Yeah. No one sits behind you and tells you like, this spoon has to come down your throat now. And here's the dessert. It has to come down as well. It doesn't happen, right? And you as an adult, you have somewhat of a responsibility to take care of yourself in that regard. And also act, especially when you have kids at home, act somewhat like a role model that you can control yourself. You're not that animal who just needs to eat everything in plain sight. Especially when you're into kind of training and nutrition and you have the skill, or maybe not the skill set, but you have somewhat the knowledge, you can quite easily apply it. It's not rocket science. You don't have to go through heavy formulas and calculations in order to make it happen. And I know on the spot, it can be quite challenging, of course, right? But this is also where then habits come into play. Have you always been that guy who always finishes all of the plates that are around you, where people already know that they can give their dessert to you and offer it to you because they know that you will finish it and want it? If you know yourself, right, then you can take precautious measures most of the time. It's just acting against what it is that led you to bad behavior in the past.
Yeah, and the only additional thing I'd say to what you said there, and essentially what you're talking about, is trying to take ownership for your actions and weigh up the kind of cost versus benefits in the moment. Because I do think there's probably situations, and I have had clients similar to you where they've regretted it. Certainly drinking is quite often the ones where people regret it, where they're like, oh, it's peer pressure, blah, 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 and they want to reduce their drinking in future. So then we strategize how we can do that. But I have had situations where people have come back and they've been like, hey, you know what, Steve, I didn't track over this period of time. I was somewhat mindful, but I know I overdid it, but it was worth it. I have had situations like that too. So I only want to say, like, I don't know, as an example, if lasagna's on the menu and you're like, fuck, I really want lasagna, then maybe have it. But then just realize there's a cost involved to that, and don't be upset if the next day, like, you're a bit heavier, or maybe you compensate a little bit the following days if that's appropriate for you and you can have that restraint. It's similar to overspending. Like, maybe that, don't know, trying to think of an example, that watch is worth it. You really want it. But then you have to save for the next few months maybe to be like, hey, I'm being a reasonable adult that's not going to move into debt.
100%. I totally agree with that statement as well, Steve. I, though, never had someone intentionally wanting to regain 2 kilograms in such times. And 2 kilograms is just now an arbitrary number that I'm throwing out there. I've never had it that someone was happy and proud of regaining or gaining that weight. If they've enjoyed the moment, it most of the time is just like one dinner maybe, or one meal, or one event. It's not the entire holiday. You can't tell me that you need to overindulge on breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, 7 days out of the holiday. You don't. And everyone knows this. Everyone who says, though, that they've enjoyed the holiday, right, and regained or gained a little bit of weight, right, I believe that. If, however, you've regained a lot of weight and you've enjoyed all of the meals to the highest extent, and I say enjoyment in quotation marks, which is then just like overindulge, not controlling yourself to any extent on all of the meals. If then that was intentional, I think that you have some work to do. because that is definitely not a sensible approach to then eating. This is also not a mindful approach to eating. This is wanting some leeway where there's no real leeway. And then you have to, of course, live with the consequences. And most of the people aren't really willing to live with the consequences most of the time. And if they are, right, fair enough. But then I also question why you are in the physique sports in the first place. Because this is definitely not how you improve your body composition. To gain a lot of weight in a short period of time and just overindulge on each and every single meal that you're taking in.
Yeah. No, I
think that everyone,
agree.
especially listening to us, is very well aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where normally, for most it's a bit of a mix actually. Some clients, I have to allow them to switch off a little bit. Where I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, you can enjoy these things. Like, they're almost so like dedicated to the macros, where I'm like, hey, it's okay to switch off now and then. You're like, the stress that you have from being 100% on point, I've been there before, it's not worth it. And then there are other people where you have to be, hey guy, if you really want this, you need to level up your consistency and adherence, and your perspective on food needs to change a little bit. So it's a case by case thing for sure, but the people we're talking to, I think, need to take your words into consideration completely, because we're not talking to the average person.
Yeah, and also you don't have to follow each and everything, or take it as some, I don't know how to put it, take it as such that I'm completely right in everything that I'm saying, right? There are some bits that you can probably pick out for yourself, and to what extent you're going to apply it to yourself is dependent on what your goals are, what your personal preferences are, your situation, of course, etc., etc. And that needs to be taken into consideration. But to pull it all the way back to the beginning of enjoyment, the definition of enjoyment is, of course, even there, individual dependent, because there is no clear definition to what enjoyment means in that context, at least in our fitness bubble context. If you throw up something like, I don't know, a dictionary, you will find a definition. But even there, how to interpret it in the sense of like nutrition and social occasions is always up to the individual. And this is a problem in itself, because it's kind of the same thing as someone who tells you to train hard. What does that mean? What are we talking about? Are we talking about intensity? Are we talking about the length of a training session? What kind of hard are we talking about in the sense of like physical exhaustion and all that kind of stuff? And the same applies to, of course, enjoyment. What does enjoyment mean to you? Because we clearly know that there are things that you do enjoy, Steve, that I may not enjoy. So for us, maybe there may not be that much of a difference in comparison to other people, right? But for example, take Charlotte. What she enjoys massively is probably not what you enjoy the most in your life, right? Yeah. And then we already have there a huge discrepancy of the term enjoyment, and apply this to single situations there as well. And this is where then problems arise. And we can even take it one step further. Even culturally speaking, enjoyment means different things as well. And if you're then an online coach and you're working with people across the globe, you can also there come to points where there's a little bit of misinterpretation, disagreement there. And that can be quite problematic on how to apply enjoyment and also moderation in the sense of enjoyment.
Yeah, when I think about enjoyment, I know I get so much enjoyment knowing that what I've done in a day is productive towards my physique goals.
Yes.
That almost counters almost anything that would be enjoyable but take away from that. Yeah. And so that's why we relatively are pretty strict year round, because we enjoy so much knowing that we're progressing our physiques. And I think that's probably a lot of the listeners too. But it's like, again, not faltering too far from that. And sometimes, I think Mike's spoken about this before, like a night out and like being really late, maybe you think you would enjoy that. Maybe try it, see how it goes. If you didn't enjoy it, know that you're not to do that. Like for me, I'm not going to enjoy that. It doesn't matter if I don't drink and it's, I don't know, I'm watching anime all night. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to enjoy being hours past my bedtime because the next day I feel like shit. I know it's impacted my like training session, so on and so forth. But you can always get like tip dip your toe in and see if you do get like the life satisfaction that you think you might out of such a thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why even listening to this podcast and probably re-listening to what I'm saying, there will be people who can relate to that and resonate with the things that I'm saying, and people who are in total disagreement with my definition of what enjoyment is and your definition of enjoyment. And that's totally all right. At the same time, we can, of course, break it a little bit more so down, because we are a little bit more of a niche podcast. We talk about physique aspirations, improving your performance in the gym, and by that improving, of course, the way that you look. And because of that, we can already narrow it down of what enjoyment in a general sense means and what some sensible measures around that may look like.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that was a useful discussion and kind of a bit of an extension on last week's, which I think I haven't actually read the comments, but some of them, I saw them come through and I kind of glanced at them. It seemed like generally positive feedback from the episode, which I'm glad about. And actually a few people have asked questions even on Instagram about like how to approach social occasions. I'm like, actually that episode's really useful, because that long form chat between us both, I think, allows, again, people in our niche to have a better understanding about how they might want to go about things. It's like you said as well, people can pick and choose what they want from that discussion too. They don't have to take like your word as gold and how you approach everything exactly how they do it. And we've hopefully discussed that in a way where we haven't made it as like black and white, this is what you must do. It's like figuring it out for yourself.
Yeah. And also, just to give a little bit of a concluding statement here, try your very best. And also, this is kind of a loose thing to be saying, right? It's not a concrete advice, but that would also be foolish to put out, because each and every one is in a different state and different situation. But try your very best. If you want to have like 2 pieces of cake, maybe just one. Right? Give it a try. And if you realize that this was indeed enough, totally fine. Then you've learned a little bit more about yourself. If indeed you wanted to have 2 pieces of cake, hey, go ahead, see how you feel. And then hopefully you have a little bit more data and insight on how to deal with it in the future. We should never really regret our decisions. We should always just learn from them. And if there's something that we didn't really like the outcomes of, hopefully we make something differently the next time in order to not let it happen again. This is the only way that we can grow and get better over time. And this is also how we got to the point where we are at nowadays. This was a long journey of kind of mistakes and fucking things up and idiotic things as well.
Yeah.
But it taught us a couple of valuable lessons.
Yeah, I think it's so well stated. Yeah, I can't think of anything better to say apart from, how much do you like carrot cake?
I can't really say anything
Have you had
about
carrot
this.
cake?
No.
Carrot cake. I don't know why. For me, I'm not a big fan of cake in general, but I had carrot cake on the weekend.
Just want to say, like, I can't really say anything about cakes because I never really have cake.
I'm just not, there's something about the sponge, all that stuff, I'm just not bothered by it. It's one of the sweet like desserts I'm not fussed by, but carrot cake for some reason just gets me. I had a I had a slice of carrot cake this weekend, but it was like I took a slice and it was like the smallest fucking slice ever, and I was like, hey, should I make this look like a normal slice, or am I happy with what I've got here? And I was like, no, I'm happy with what I've got here. I just decided to take that, and it was enough to just get the taste of carrot cake. But if I was dieting, if that was a mini cut, and I was at my parents' this weekend, so that's why I wouldn't have had that. And I mean, day to day, I never have opportunities to eat carrot cake, but this was like, just sat there and I was like, I do fucking like carrot cake, but I'm in a mass, so it was appropriate to have some, but I didn't need to go crazy with it. I didn't need to go back for a second slice.
I think that's perfect, Steve. Honestly, it's also there so valuable that it put it out there, that you have some self-restriction, self-discipline, that if you are in a certain scenario, you have to then weigh the potential consequences and whether it's worth it, right? And you said it yourself, hey, in a gaining phase, I can easily allow for it because it fits into my daily budget. In a mini cut, not so much, because I know it leaves me hungrier afterwards. It just makes the rest of the day much harder on myself, and then it's simply not worth it. Even though that it tastes amazing, maybe even better than in a gaining phase, the potential consequences and the cost that you have to pay afterwards, simply not worth it for you. And I think it's so valuable that you bring it out, because you act like an adult. You weigh the pros against the cons and come up with a decision. And I will, because Katie's mom, she's always baking some cakes. I will ask her if she can make a carrot cake at some point in order for me to actually have a try. So as you may know, I like brownies. So if there's something remotely like this, do a brownie for me. Or what I also do like is New York cheesecake. Cheesecake is actually pretty good.
Yeah. Cheesecake is great. Very calorie dense, though. That's
true.
That can easily get you. And the other thing I had was flapjacks. You might like flapjacks.
I never had flapjacks either.
Like a properly
I know
baked
what they are,
flapjack.
though. So a carrot cake, I have no idea. So I have I have a picture in my head what a carrot cake looks like.
It's probably not what you think.
No, exactly. I think that is completely wrong. I know, though, what a flapjack is.
I think if you like cheesecake, carrot cake, I mean, it's not similar, but in some ways it is. So I think you'll probably like carrot cake. It's like, see if Katie's mum's good at cooking it.
Yeah, probably. It. I will report back when I had it.
Yes. Amazing. Cool. We're up on time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Do you want to end the show?
Yes. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully, again, there's been some nuggets of wisdom or some interest, and we appreciate your ears as always. When this comes out, we will still have tickets, a few available for the London weekend of training. So that is going to be, when you come, you'll get some training instruction. So just with a small group of people, and we'll give you some kind of insights into like lifting, and we'll probably customize that to what people want on the day in terms of what lifts they want to learn more about. And obviously just have opportunity for Q&A. And then whichever ticket you decide to purchase, you'll be able to choose a muscle group that you want to train, and you'll be taken through a training session for that with every coach. So it's myself, Nick Shaw, Jared Feather, Pascal's also obviously going to be there, Mike Israetel, of course. So like Pascal said, there's not that many people who are attending. Like, it's not a huge, crazy group, basically. So it's going to be pretty tight knit, and so you'll get a lot of time with everyone. So I think it's worth it just from that regard. So
yeah, just to make it not sound like as if no one is participating.
I was like that's what it sounded like, right?
many people, you had the option, of course, to purchase additional tickets for 50% for each and every additional training session that you're booking. And many people actually went ahead and booked several training sessions. So that's why the amount of people that are participating is actually quite low, but they nearly all went for like 2 to 4 training sessions. So they want to participate at a lot of training sessions. So the group itself will be small, which I think is a great thing, because the less people there are, the more beneficial it is for each and every single individual, because they have, of course, more time and they have to compete with less people around them. So they actually then, once again, in return, get more time with each and every person.
Yeah. So it's pretty close to like one-on-one PT with everyone in some sense.
Yeah.
And like Pascal said, if you really want to trash yourself, you can purchase multiple sessions and really destroy yourself. And I think there's even a masterclass ticket.
Yes.
Is there one available? It might not be available by the time this is live, but if it is, then you can have an opportunity to come to dinner with us. Have exclusive Q&A time with us. There's only 5 of those totally available, so it will be very exclusive, and you'll get even more contact time, which I think is pretty valuable.
And I know that there are, I don't know how many people, but there are some people who are participating in all 4 training sessions. I don't know how they will be able to survive it, but of course, this is also something that you can do if you want to.
Yeah, that's going to be rough.
Yeah.
They're basically getting their overreaching week in a day.
Yeah.
So guys, thank you so much. That will be linked in the description. If you've got any questions about it, feel free to send us a DM over on Instagram, and we'll get back to you. Otherwise, thank you again for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, like the damn video. Is that what Omar says? Like the damn video? I feel like that's something he says. And give us a comment, all that good stuff. A rating over on Spotify. I always forget to mention all these things. Probably everyone's left by now. So, but if you're not, then do all that. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.